How's it going, my friends? Back with another video today. And today I'm going to do basically a lesson on one thing that I have wanted to talk about for so long. So I've mentioned in a couple of my other videos how important Stanley Kubrick has been to me in my journey as a photographer and just kind of a mentor. You know, obviously I didn't know the guy, but through his movies and the stuff that he's created, I do consider him a mentor. He's one of the people that I've learned or tried to model my photography in terms of, and really extracted or really studied to extract the principles that he used in his work. Stanley Kubrick was a guy who was controversial. Some people considered him an absolute genius. I do, but some people didn't really respect his work. But I think that goes with anybody who's putting out something new into the world is always going to face distinct lines. Some people love them, some people hate them. I'm in the camp of I think that he's an absolute genius and there's a lot to learn. So before we get into some of these pictures that we can study, Stanley Kubrick started off as a photographer before he moved into cinematography and directing movies. And I think that's important that we recognize that, because we're photographers here. There are some people that do video, but this is mainly a photography channel. And this guy started with a base of photography to learn how to frame things, perspective, his lighting, and all the different things that went into his work really started off from that base of photography. So he used a lot of photography film lenses or photography camera lenses in his films that had to get specifically adapted to his film cameras that he used, and a lot of the principles that he learned in photography carried over to his cinematographic or cinegraphic work or whatever. But his cinematography basically, and how he used the film camera to get stories that are just so epic. Stanley Kubrick was known as a guy who would basically, very, very controlling, high amount of control over the work and control over the final product. But Stanley Kubrick, the thing that I loved about him that really translated into my work is he would basically set up the shots without the camera in mind. So what he would do is he would arrange the actors in a certain way. He would make sure that the takes were right. He would make sure the lighting was right. He would spend a lot of time creating the atmosphere, and once he found that he saw something that he really liked, then he would figure out how to shoot it. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot with the 50, or I'm going to shoot with a long telephoto lens or something like that and get the camera set up and then put people in the picture. What he would do is he would arrange everything so it was beautiful to him or interesting to him first, and then he would find the right way to shoot it. Stanley Kubrick was also known for being a person that would literally spend exorbitant amounts of time just walking around the site, looking through different range finders and different kind of camera lenses, and just looking for the right perspective. And everybody on set would just kind of be waiting around, waiting for him to say, okay, this is where we're going to shoot it or how we're going to shoot it from. And I think that's important to mention, because it shows that he really, really cared about the perspective of the camera in the lens. It was not, oh, let's just shoot this. It needs to be shot the right way. And everything in the movie that I'm going to discuss today, Barry Lyndon, is basically just a work of art. All the scenes are absolutely beautiful. So we're going to go through some shots from the movie Barry Lyndon. This is a movie that's considered one of the greatest cinematographic achievements in history. It's a highly regarded film for the cinematography, and it's extraordinarily interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the storyline. It's kind of boring a little bit to me. The storyline didn't really engage me, but you should watch it and you should study it, because the cinematography and the lighting is absolutely gorgeous. Stanley Kubrick used mostly natural light for all of his shots and throughout the whole movie, which is pretty much incredible. A couple different photos I'm going to show you in here, he did use artificial lighting, but I'll show you why and how he did it. And but it's a beautiful movie and we should definitely study it. Okay, so let's get into the first shot here. Now this shot here is one of the main opening scenes. It's a duel, obviously. You can see both of them are pointing their guns at each other, and some people in the middle of them. But you can instantly see right here that this shot is framed absolutely beautifully. There is no question about how beautiful this shot is. And it's not really about the light. The light here, yes, there's some light hitting this brick wall right here in front, but the framing is where it really shines and stands out. You can see that this is a photographer shooting a movie, somebody with a photography background. Now, I want you to notice this stuff because I do say this a lot. When you're shooting people, or how this pertains to my wedding photography or engagement photography, you really want to think of yourself as a landscape photographer that's putting people in the frame. So it's not you're just going out there and looking for poses, or you're just focusing directly on the couple to get great shots. What you're doing is you're looking at the atmosphere and trying to find interesting compositions to, gather everything that's going on there and putting it into a picture. Now, this is one style. There's times where close-ups and shots of just the people or whatever you're shooting to isolate them from everything else is important, and I've done videos on that before. That technique I use also. But this is something completely different. This is the opposite. This is taking a beautiful composition, a framing. You have the trees here, this one to the left with the branch hanging over into this tree on the right, and then you have this wall right in the front, and then it opens up this little pocket in the front of all of these people standing here in this duel over this beautiful mountainside. Now, this would not be possible if you're just focusing on your subjects. Wouldn't be possible. This is something where Kubrick was standing back and he was saying, I want to take in the atmosphere here, and then I want to place people in this frame to make it interesting. And I think that this is one of the most beautiful shots of the entire film. And I think that we can learn so much. If you take people in your scenes, and no matter what you're shooting, street photography, engagement photography, wedding photography, family photography, anything really, if you take into account the whole picture and look for scenarios with the place that you're working with, I don't care if it's inside or outside, you can always step back and look at what's going on in my atmosphere, what's going on in the room I'm in, what's going on in this piece of landscape that I'm shooting at, this field, this park, at the beach, whatever. Just, you can step back and you can look from a wider perspective, find something beautiful, and then place your people in that frame, or place your thing in that frame to enhance the whole video, or the whole picture in general. I think this is an absolutely beautiful shot. It's one of the most stunning ones in my opinion. Let's move on to the next one here. So this one is another incredible one. Stanley Kubrick was also known for this film as he studied a lot of old art paintings. And it's funny, I have mentioned this actually before, is I did that before I started studying Stanley Kubrick in terms of like photography. I actually instinctively kind of did that. I love old art. I love old paintings. They inspire me like crazy. Caravaggio, old Rembrandt stuff. Michelangelo, all those old painters, the way that they lit things, the way that they painted their compositions and people interacting with each other in the frame, always just stirred my imagination like crazy. So when I found out that Stanley Kubrick did the exact same thing for this movie, he would study old art paintings and kind of set up scenes where there's multiple people in the frame. He would set that up kind of how he saw paintings or people who are in paintings posed. That is another great tip, guys. You can go and study old art, sculptures. If you're shooting people, study sculpture. The way that they, created these sculptures for body movements and poses, absolutely beautiful. Study old paintings. The way that they put people together and interacted them in the frame, absolutely gorgeous. So you have this shot. It's just pleasing right to the eye. There's a lot of straight lines. Everything's kind of placed in the rule of thirds here. The important subjects are on the right hand lower side, and you can kind of see how they're placed. It literally is. It looks like a painting. It's a shot that looks like a painting, and I could stare at this for hours. I think this is one that's really important to point out. This next one right here is another example of looking at your landscape, taking a wide shot of everything that's in the frame, and then thinking of placing your people in it as a secondary measure. Obviously, we have a gorgeous landscape and design here. And a lot of photographers, say they were shooting people, you're doing an engagement shoot, a lot of photographers would walk up maybe 6 to 8 feet in front of them and just shoot, take out the person on the horse and put, a couple there instead. A lot of photographers would just go up maybe 6 to 8 feet in front of them and just shoot the people, interacting with each other, and really cut out all the rest of the frame. I say this all the time also, guys. One of the best tips that you can learn if you're shooting people is to get in close, get really, really far away, get high or get low. Okay? Don't just sit there and just shoot straight on from like 6 feet away. It's, there are times you do that, but I would encourage you to really play with your perspectives. And this is a great way to kind of look at that. You get back, you take in the whole, you find a beautiful atmosphere like this. If you just remove the subject from this, it would still be an absolutely beautiful shot, and it draws you in right into the middle where you want that person to look. But you have all this beautiful stuff in the frame, and it's, even though it's absolutely gorgeous, it's still not distracting. It just kind of all blends in together. So this is a perfect example. Look at what's going on in the outside, and then bring your people in as a secondary measure, almost as an afterthought. This next one right here. Now this is, like I said, Kubrick had done 90% of the movie with natural light. That was one of the things that he was really adamant on. He wanted things to be naturally lit and not artificial. And this is one of those shots, though, that was artificial. They had lights, big lights set up on the outside of this window right here to kind of to bring in this natural looking light from the right-hand side. But this is an excellent example of directional light. Pay attention to where Kubrick's shooting from right here. He's shooting from an angle of where the light is coming from. So your light is coming in from the right-hand side, hitting your subjects, but he's not shooting where that light's coming from. He's not over by the window shooting back, or he's not close to the window. He's almost at a 90-degree angle off the window. So you can see the source of light coming in, but you can also see where it's hitting. It's almost like a spotlight. Now you can use this in your photography very, very easily. Sarah and I, I'd say probably 85% of our lit shots, our artificially lit shots, are with one flash or one light source. We like to play with one light source because it highlights. It's almost like a spotlight hitting in on what you want the viewer to look like or look at. These are very simple compositions. You do not have a lot of distraction. You do have an atmosphere around it where you can see the beautiful architecture on the walls. You can see where the light's coming in on this big window, but you know exactly where to look. Your eyes aren't dancing around trying to find other places to look in the frame or what should I be focused on. This light is almost like a spotlight directing you exactly where to look. And you can do this with your flash. It's really not that difficult. Even if you have bigger lights, I mean, you could set this up yourself, and flashes are really powerful nowadays. Have a couple inside of a room, set some flashes up on the outside of the windows, and put some diffusers on them, and then shoot it through, and then it's almost like sunlight coming through. But like I said, the compositions and taking the atmosphere into account, then placing your subjects in as a secondary measure is a high level way to look at photography. Like I said, most people are just going to go there, they're going to stick a camera in somebody's face maybe 6 to 8 feet away, and then shoot that person interacting without paying attention to what's going on in the bigger picture. Don't do that. This next one right here I wanted to put in because it shows the use of straight lines and perspective really, really well. Kubrick was also a master of, purveyor. He really liked straight lines in a lot of his work. You can see that. He liked to make sure that your perspective was going exactly where he wanted it to go, and he would use straight lines and leading lines to put you there. So this one is great. I mean, you feel like you're like, one of the soldiers, maybe a row back, just looking at the oncoming army coming at you. And it's a perfect example of just using straight lines, perspective, taking in the atmosphere into account, and then basically doing something that draws the viewer in. I don't have a lot to say about this photo other than I really love it because it makes you feel like your perspective is actually one of these soldiers. But pay attention to your lines is a great, great thing that I can have you guys focus on because I do it all the time in my photography. This is the last one that I really wanted to show you guys. Kubrick was also, he used a lot of telephoto lenses in this movie. This is a long zoom that zoomed in all the way. I think this is a 200 mil or 250 mil, and you can see that there's a lot of compression in this, but also you can see there's a lot of movement in it. Now this is obviously just a still, but if you could picture this as a rolling movie, if you go watch the movie, you'll see. You're going to see he's focused on this, general or leader right here with the sword holding straight up, the guy who's leading, and they're walking, he's following them with the telephoto and getting that movement in. So all the other soldiers around him are compressed. You're focused directly on the person that he wants you to focus on, but then he's panning from the side with that long zoom, so you can kind of get this feeling of movement as he's going. So that's another thing that Sarah and I use in our photos sometimes, is if we want to do a feeling of movement, what we'll do is we'll throw on a longer lens and we'll pan with the subject as they're moving. We'll go, pan with them. So we're moving with them. And when you're zoomed out with a long telephoto, you're going to get a lot of movement and blur. And now this is kind of a technique that you want to practice. It's not very simple, because your things can go out of focus kind of easily, and it's kind of hard to keep people in the frame too, because it accelerates the movement when you have a long telephoto lens. But try this, guys, if you're with a couple and you want to get some movement into there, like they're running or something like that, have them hold hands, get way back, zoom in with all the way with your 70 to 200, and pan with them, and you're going to get some blur with the atmosphere. They'll be in focus, but and everything will be compressed, so it's almost this like just laser-like focus on your subject. But this one, even though you're taking a zoom and you're zooming in, you're also getting some atmosphere here. You're getting a sense of what's going on with the other soldiers. They're not the main point of focus here. They're compressed and they're out of focus compared to the subject, but you're still zoomed in, so you're not getting a crazy atmosphere, but you're still getting a picture of what's going on here. So add multiple elements to the frame, just like Kubrick did. That's the last photo I wanted to show you guys, but I think this is super important. If you guys go back, watch the movie, and then come back, study these photos, I think you can learn a lot in your photography. This is a video that I really wanted to make for a long time, so I hope it's helpful to you guys. Please let me know in the comments if it was, and I love doing videos like this. So until the next video, my friends.